and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1070th New Social Environment. I'm Eleanor, Programs Associate here at the Rail, and today I have the huge pleasure and privilege of being your MC for a conversation with Tatiana Martinez Collevati and Paul Gladston. And now I'll introduce our guests and host for today. Yique's research runs through classical Marxism, the Frankfurt School's critique of society, and the social transformations of neoliberalism. His work and curated projects have been shown in venues including TATE Modern, Fluxus Museum in Greece, Ming Contemporary Art Museum in Shanghai, and others. The artist has been featured in the BBC, The Guardian, The New York Times, and other media. Unapologetically self-identifying as both a critic and a troublemaker, Yique's unceasingly challenges conventions, pushing the boundaries of artistic and intellectual discourse. Tatiana Martinez Collevati is an independent curator with dual bases in London and Los Angeles. Grounded in a rich academic foundation melding art history and anthropology, she earned her Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology from the University of Texas, Austin, followed by a Master of Arts in Art History and Visual Culture at Richmond, the American International University. Her scholarly research pursuits delve into diverse realms such as DIY and visual culture, archaeology, sociology, and politics, reflecting a multidisciplinary approach to her curatorial practice. With a keen eye for innovation and a deep understanding of cultural dynamics, Tatiana has created multiple pop-up exhibitions in cosmopolitan hubs of Los Angeles and London. And our host today, award-winning critical theorist and cultural historian Paul Gladston, is the Judith Neilson Chair Professor of Contemporary Art, University of New South Wales, Sydney, and a distinguished affiliate fellow of UK-China Humanities Alliance, Tsinghua University. He's co-editor of the book series Contemporary East Asian Visual Cultures, Societies and Politics, and was a founding principal editor of the Journal of Contemporary Chinese Art. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning, and I'll turn it over to you, Paul, to get us started.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. Before we get started, I'd just like to kind of say a great thanks to Eleanor as MC today and Chloe at Brooklyn Rail and all of their colleagues for the wonderful work they do on this series. It's absolutely fantastic. It's been an absolute privilege to be part of this. So thank you very much to all of you. I just jumped off a plane from London to Sydney in Australia. So it's about, it's after 1 o'clock in the morning here in Australia. So we're in another morning. And so if I'm a little bit groggy, it's down to that. A very long journey. Anyway, I'm delighted to have at least got off the plane and not had any delays for today. I have enormous pleasure in just having a small introduction to two wonderful people. Yique, who, as Eleanor makes clear, is a wonderful artist and curator and troublemaker from China, who's recently completed his postgraduate degree at the Royal College of Art in London. And Tatiana, who's a wonderful curator. And both of them are going to talk about, give kind of related presentations. Yique is going to talk about his work. And Tatiana is going to talk about her work as a curator and how it segues with or links in with Yique's, particularly around an exhibition that they're both involved in London later this year at the Ugly Duck, which my chair has a small involvement in, both in terms of funding and maybe some presentational work around that. But it's basically down to these two young, wonderful people. And I'd just like to say a little bit of context. I got involved with this because I was asked to comment on Yique's art action, I think, as he describes it, on Brick Lane in London, East London core socialist values, which will be described here, so I won't go into detail about it. But I thought this was a marvelous piece of work, and I commented on that for the South China Morning Post in Hong Kong. But Yique&rsquo's had this kind of intense media interest in this work, and also his kind of wider thinking in the international press last year, as Eleanor makes clear, in organs as diverse as the BBC and South China Morning Post, and I think it was maybe I can't remember which one it was, but anyway, a whole bunch of other kind of major media outlets, which sparked a lot of interest in Yique&rsquo's work, and he was all over social media as well, which was exactly the point of East London core socialist values, maybe a little bit beyond the intentions, as we'll hear, of Yique&rsquo. Anyway, enough from me. I'm very happy now to pass on to Yique&rsquo. He's going to give us a little talk about his work, not just the London work, but more widely. And then Tatiana is going to talk about her relationship with all of this and the exhibition in London later this year. And Yique&rsquo is going to give us a reading of a really quite important, described in China as an avant-garde artist and poet, who, if you don't know about the work of these poets and artists from China, you really ought to, and you're going to get a chance to hear about that today. Anyway, Yique&rsquo, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm honored to participate in this conversation. And first and foremost, I would like to express my deep gratitude to Paul Gladston for his continuous support. He has provided immense support and understanding towards my artistic career and my seemingly rebellious creations. I feel incredibly fortunate to have encountered such a mentor and friend in my creative journey. I would also like to extend my thanks to Tati, who is also attending this conference. She's one of the curators of my upcoming exhibition, Yique&rsquo Multiple Extremes, at Ugly Duck in London. She is really smart and she's really creativity, and contributions have been invaluable. Yeah, I'm not really prepared because I'm always like just saying like freely when I have any talk. So what's the next? Okay. Yeah, this is a work in like almost more than half a year before when I was in London, and in that time I studied in Royal College of Art for my master's degree, and my program is called Contemporary Art Practice. It's really interesting because this program is not kind of determined by media, because like in RCA, we also have kind of photography, painting, sculpture, but like contemporary art practice, when I come into that program, there are lots of different person are doing different media. Someone are shooting, making photography, someone are making sculpture. So I'm really free to do what I want to do in that program. And also I come to London, I should say 2022. So I come to London 2 years before, when I just graduate from my BA. Oh no, 20 and 2020. When it's my first time come to London. In that time, I just graduate from my BA, and I suddenly applied to RSA, but like in that time it's a pandemic and some problems, so I quit this program, and I coming to art center in China to work. Yeah, so then I go through a 2 years work in art field. Then I one in these 2 years, so I think a lot about art, and I learn a lot about Chinese art history. Yeah, it changed me a lot in this 2 year of career, and also in that time when I come to London, it gave me a really big change. I feel it's really different compared to someone they just graduate from BA but haven't come into a art market or like art field to work. So I'm going to like kind of thinking. Elena, you could just put in that before the page, last bit page. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. So reflecting on my artistic career, it began during my undergraduate years. I did not study at a traditional art school. Instead, I attended to Communication University of China, where I studied in communication in that time. So early on, I was more exposed to and understand social science and journalism, which I believe has influenced my later creations. And graduating from the Communication University of China gave me an disparate understanding of art, media, and society. After graduation, I became instead of in curation. So, and alongside my work, I divide into art history research and activity participated in social activities and exhibition events. So in that time, like I'm living in Hangzhou, and in that time I'm a curator in called Yique Art Centre. It's a little bit different between China and outside China. It's their how to say art institution, because most of Chinese art institution is being supported by how to say like the company who's selling the house, kind of property company. They are supporting Chinese art mostly, especially contemporary art, because except art school in China, most art institution supported by government is more traditional. Yeah, and so let's come to this picture. So this picture is I created in August 4th that night. So, and for me, it's one night dream, to be honest. I just because before that time I come to Brickland a lot of times, and I'm always thinking, may I do something here, and what kind of creation I can do, because I'm not really familiar with graffiti. Even like I know graffiti history a lot, and when I study art history, but I'm not really I don't have that skill to paint a really beautiful graffiti or something. And and I also feel in that Brickland Street, the graffiti changed really fast. It's not just about beautify. It's not just about visual. It's kind of an ideology behind this kind of war. So this is really interesting because one of the BBC journalists saying, do I kind of demanded by Chinese government to do that work, to do this work? I say absolutely not. But he's asking, he feel I'm kind of pursuing an political culture, but like I feel I'm covering a political culture sometimes. So it's but I need to say I do feel this artwork I'm created, it's not a political aim. I don't have any political aim because it's an artwork for me. And this 12 words it's good words. It's a really good concept. And it should be purchased by all around the world. So it's not like a words make American again. It's not words like that. So I feel it's really a balanced words. It's just it's Chinese. But why I feel like in UK every language could be used. So I feel it's fine. So when I kind of planning this work, I do worry about the following things. So I do a lot of research about law, and I interview a lot of graffiti artists who are creating in that street. They are all feeling it's really fine to do anything here. So I just have this this idea to, and that night I have that dream to write this 12 words on the wall. I couldn't forget it. I just needed to do it. Even I do a lot of research and I think a lot if it's dangerous or maybe you have something I couldn't see under this war because I'm a totally outsider of this culture. I just come to London 1 year in that time, but I still couldn't stop myself to want to do this work. So I talk with a lot of my friends, and most of them feel it's fine, and we trying to planning how to do this work, and we make some, how to say, a wooden and cut it in the machine. This machine in RCA is really good. It could cut really good. So it's because in that time I'm also in RCA, so it's really easy to get kind of like this. I just make a how to say, a fire to let it becoming Chinese words like this, and I just spray it on the wall. So it's the most difficult thing is how to cover it in white. So we cover a lot of times in the night. Okay, so this work, it's also a event. I don't know. Like sometimes I don't want to divide our works like it's a graffiti artist or it's a performance artist. It's an interaction artwork. It's for me, it could be all, or it could be all not. Yeah. Okay,
Actually,
maybe next page.
Just before we move on, just for the benefit of the audience, it's important just to give a little bit of context here. The previous pictures of Brick Lane. Brick Lane is a site, like in lots of urban spaces now, where there's a sort of, it's a legitimate site or a legitimized site for graffiti art. So it's not kind of people turning up and kind of doing illegal graffiti art. But, you know, you walk down Brick Lane, and Brick Lane's in the East End of London, you know, it's in the kind of core East End. And it's now a kind of home, a legitimized home for graffiti painting. And what Yique did was to intervene in that by covering where you see all this white paint and the red Chinese characters, that would normally carry graffiti paintings that would get kind of overpainted now and again. But what Yique did was he researched into the sort of legality of that kind of painting, and he overpainted the whole thing, obliterated the whole thing with white, and then put on these red stenciled Chinese characters. Now, Yique, I think what you might do is just describe what do these characters refer to? What do they say? Because obviously part of the point here is that an English-speaking audience, or even an international audience who didn't understand Chinese, wouldn't necessarily understand what these characters say. But what do they say?
This is really, when we are planning to do this, I'm always thinking, should I translate it to English? But like, I'm thinking this point a lot of times because this is UK. I also think this is UK, but I do want to reflect the feeling in China in that time. So it could be symbolize and also like critique for the situation in that time in China. So I want to remain the character in that time, I decide. But this also caused like maybe lots of people couldn't understand. So 富强 means prosperity. So first is prosperity and democracy and civility and harmony, 和谐 harmony, 自由 freedom and equality and justice and rule of law and dedication, honest and friendship. So it's 12 really good words and people are purchasing. It's really idea.
But these are core values of China's Communist Party, aren't they? That's the point.
Yeah, because they are using it. Yeah.
But the point is that these are some of the core values of China's ruling Communist Party, but they're also core values which most of us would subscribe to. I mean, actually, I think the major political parties in the UK would find difficulty in objecting to any of these core values.
Yeah. I feel yeah. Tati, go ahead.
No, I think specifically for this piece of art that you did, I think it was interesting how you kind of stripped the context of those 12 words and kind of presented them within a very public Western area. And by showing these words that they're all kind of, like Paul was saying, they're just common human values, right? And so it's just interesting to see what kind of happened, the backlash that kind of happened, because it kind of raised questions about, the different environments that we live in, and even kind of how we perceive freedom differently as well, because I mean, everyone should want these values, right? So I think it was just a really important thing to do that here specifically in those Chinese characters,
That's crucial, isn't it? That they seem like the universal values, but as Tatiana is saying,
also,
they're not context free. Sorry, Yique, go on.
I feel like in that time, many people have been like drawn into political discussions about this work of like Yeah, I could understand it because Chinese government, you are using these words a lot, but it's still, the words have their meaning itself. So even these 12 words together, it also have their meanings itself. It not means it just belong to Chinese government. It belong to words itself for me. So it seems like I want to get back these words to the word, to words itself, not just Chinese government. Yeah, and I feel it like too much people ignoring its artistic nature. It's not simply about like political instruction, but it could reflect that time or reflect something, but it not means it's just something. So, and also people in that time sometimes feel the person who are doing this is kind of an antisocial behavior or like vandalism, but rather graffiti under the guise of freedom. It's a form of dual rebellion against the two environments I feel it's in a very different way, or like because I use one thing, even like to it's not, I don't know if it's okay to say testing, but like I do feel like there are lots of people doing really dramatic and also paint the whole wall in the, if you say it's a brick, you see the Brooklyn history, like people graffiti. A lot of people used it to cover all the wall before. So this is also I've been researched before I doing this. So I feel it's not, it's kind of pretending, people are pretending, oh, it's all free, it's really free. So it let let an outsider like me, a person who come from a different country, to thinking, whoa, is that free? So this is also kind of becoming one reason I want to do this. Yeah, and when I rethink about this work, I do feel, because it's already happened more than half years, but I always think a lot about this work, even I'm working in a museum as a curator. But I sometimes just people were talking about this, and even like now I don't want to describe this work as a good work or nice work. It's just a work, you know. And people still talking about this, so I feel it's successful. Like I know it's sometimes maybe costs two results. Maybe someone feels upset about this. Someone feels it's too intensive. Yeah, I do feel that. So maybe I'm so young. Sometimes I just feel, so I really want to kind of to it's, how to say, it's rebellious. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the response or the reception to this? Because when you're going to show us a video of the sort of making of the work in a little while, but
oh yeah, I could show the video.
You had like audience collaboration, spontaneous audience collaboration with the work, but also tell us a bit about the kind of response to this, both in terms of the writing over or graffitiing of the work, and also how you were trolled online. So this became not just a work in situ, but a social media work as well.
Yeah, it's really a social media work. I do feel like I haven't, because when I do this work before, I do think maybe gonna have a lot of people blaming this behavior, but I haven't thought it's that big, to be honest. So in that time, I couldn't imagine like every day I could get more than 1,000 messages and emails and everything. And in China, it's really a kind of common thing. It's like when someone be troubled in something and his details will be public. It's really hard I don't know who are doing this. Maybe like Chinese police or in the system, because they have the power to search someone's details like address or phone numbers. So in that time, my details, even my parents' details, all being public, and people still like keep calling my parents. So this is becoming really. Sometimes I feel I'm not worry anything when I do a work if I prepared, but I haven't prepared my parents' number and my parents' address becoming public in that time. So that makes me feel I have kind of, how to say, 弱点. It means like people have some how to say it like sometimes I feel I'm really brave, and I don't feel anything when I creation a work I've prepared, but I haven't thought in that time, because for me, my parents, it's totally a different thing. It's kind of maybe it becoming, if like, how to say that word, it's like, because sometimes maybe a fighter who fight with someone, but like they have a wife becoming catched by something. So this is really make me feel not good in that time. So yeah, so in that time it's a lot of Paul,
I was just going to say there were kind of three, we might add to this, but there were at least three lots of reception here. One is that people, once you've made the painting, the wall painting, which the format of this painting is something which people in China would be very familiar with, certainly historically. This kind of sloganeering, propaganda on walls has been a normal part of public life in China for decades, if not the best part of a century and more. But you had three forms of reception on the painting itself. People wrote or graffitied over it, sometimes with comments that were anti-Chinese or anti-Chinese government, because they perceived the work maybe to be a kind of a pro-Chinese government work, which it isn't. The other one is that you then got trolled online, which you just described, including your parents, you know, kind of criticizing you. And there was reception inside China where the Chinese press, Chinese media initially quite liked the work because it seemed to be supporting Chinese Communist Party values. And then they realized that it wasn't quite that and withdrew from that situation. But you also got kind of media and social media responses and trolling within China. And I'll ask you a question about that later on, but there are all of the work isn't just the painting, it's all of these kind of responses. It's like a kind of palimpsest, both on the wall and in now, because of the world we live in, social media as well.
Yes.
Perhaps you should show the video. Let the audience see the video, because I think that says a lot about how the work was made and who was involved.
Yes.
And what happened and the responses to it.
Yes, let me show the videos.
Great.
Sorry, just my nice.
们做的这个东西，相对于东伦敦这个语境，它是非常的 graffiti， 因为 graffiti 本来就是一个很反派性一个东西。
Actually, tomorrow we're gonna walk this way.
Yeah, you're gonna see what happens. It's some magic.
You're magic.
Hello, welcome to Brick Lane.
You can paint everywhere. Everyone is doing this. And even like maybe tomorrow someone cover your painting.
This one I think is going to last like maybe not much more than 1 week, maximum 1 week.
Guys, so please, somebody will be coming in with us.
它基本上还是普世价值的一部分。如何做到，那是很难的。不但是中国做不到，西方也做不到。
Do you understand?
What do you want?
I need your name.
我叫一雪。红砖巷的这个，我把它叫做东伦敦社会主义价值观，就是我策划和发起的。
The kind of status quo, kind of understanding.
Because it encourages conversation and it makes people question the ethics around public art practices.
Artworks don't exist in a vacuum. They don't exist autonomously. They exist within an art world. They exist within a society and culture. And the meaning is always a kind of interaction between the artwork and these external things, these concepts.
他们觉得东伦敦这个也是加深国人对中国人的刻板印象。
不，那我觉得是他没有去细看，或者说是知道你这个作品到底要说什么。
I mean, that's a great little introduction to the work. But we saw the police and also some local kind of government officials there. Why did they intervene and why couldn't they stop you? Yique, turn your sound up. That's it.
The first, because they, I think that time it have two teams. Like the first, it's not police. They are kind of property manager maybe, or like some kind of, because they are also really kind of like a police, but it's not police because I asking them to give me some certificate or like because I've already Googled it's free graffiti place and everyone here, they all know it's free graffiti here because in that time also there are lots of people around. It's not the person we are doing in our team, like it have a lot of people around there. So they all say, yeah, this is really a free graffiti place. Why we need to stop? Why we need to be like the people want to kind of charge us for money. And sometimes I just feel maybe the property managers, they want to make money from us, from the person not from UK. so yeah, so in the first time we haven't stopped. I just let my friends, we could just do it. They will not like touch us or like stop us physically. But in the next time, and they are calling police to come into the Brick Lane, and then police come, and we have talking, and police just saying like, even this is free graffiti place, but they haven't no, they haven't gone through wants to someone like paint that big, that much place. So it seems not really good. So they are, you could know, like you could get in that in my conversation, it's like they fail. So it means they are not really determined in what they are doing. So the police also not really how to say, be confident about their behavior. Like, do I need to stop them or not? So it also becoming a question to the police. So
I think that's,
so this is yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. We're obviously we have limited amounts of time, so I'd probably like to ask Tatiana to speak in a moment. But
yeah.
I think the point you're making is a very important one. As my interpretation is that the official people there were local council officials in London and the police. And what you managed to point out, to reveal performatively, is that graffiti is supposed to be free, it's supposed to be rebellious and whatever, but it's actually being regulated by local council officials, and if they need to, they bring in the police, as we've just seen. However, they don't really have much power at all in this regard. So they can say, please stop, give me your name, which is quite offensive really, isn't it? But they can't stop. They couldn't stop you. And it reveals the limitations of the nature of the regulation of graffiti art. It's not quite what it always seems. So maybe that's a good point to bring in Tatiana. I mean, maybe you could kind of
actually,
some
when
comments on that.
Yeah, when I was doing my own research on, because the name of the council is the Tower Hamlets Council, and actually they do have a whole a document just kind of going over the rules of what graffiti should look like within those areas that are, you can graffiti for free. So it was just really interesting to see their reaction and how, I mean, they quickly took action. I mean, they did completely black out that area after, what was it, a couple of days each? I'm not entirely sure how long it lasted. But yeah, once they realized how much of a backlash it was having, how much of, I mean, even, I'm not sure if it's been mentioned, but I mean, a lot of big news outlets were covering what was happening, BBC, CNN. And so I think they just didn't want all of this attention in that area, especially regarding to graffiti when it's something that they're trying to kind of control, right? So it was just a really interesting, just everything that kind of happened all around with that piece of artwork. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at, where it kind of all starts with the exhibition, kind of like the aftermath of it all, of what happened. And with the exhibition, I am one of the curators, Yique&rsquo, Mutuality and Extremes. It'll be in London at Ugly Duck in Bermondsey from August 3rd through the 16th. And one of the main artworks is going to be the East London Socialist Core Values. We're also going to have a couple of other works from Yique, which, each artwork is going to be kind of talking about or contemplating the kind of human experience within social constructs and how, in turn, it challenges our societal norms and perceptions. And so this is just kind of all of Yique's work, right? Which is what I absolutely love, and kind of where my background also lies, coming from a bachelor's in anthropology and being able to study various different cultures and various different socio and political, in social political terms. And so this kind of dialectical thinking is what I really like to present within exhibitions, and also what Yique's work also does as well. And so, yeah, we have a couple of events going on during the exhibition. We have a private view and graffiti performance in August 2nd. And then we have a performance artwork on August 9th. And then we have our panel discussion, which will have both our Professor Paul Gladston and our Yique, which will be on August 10th. And then, I mean, the movement of the opposite, the trailer was just shown, and that will be the full documentary will actually be released during the exhibition, and that will be on August 4th. So we're really excited to have a bunch of these different events that really correlates with everything that Yique is doing and Yiche's work. Yeah.
I think Tatiana, what you're raising are some important significances of the work, which is that it interrupts all sorts of ideas of social and political freedom across cultural and political boundaries. So it's not just it's not just, or if at all, in a sense, an attack on limitations on freedom in China, although it can be interpreted in that way. It's actually showing that these limitations in their own ways exist in different contexts. So even within London, where graffiti is supposed to be a signifier of cultural freedom, but in practice, actually, it isn't. It's underpinned by all sorts of constraints and restrictions, which those of us who are alive to these things already know about. But the work performs that, I think, in a very interesting way. I'll circle back to you in a moment, Tatiana, but I'm going to ask, given the time we have, I'm going to ask Yique about the significance of the title of the exhibition, The Mutuality in Extremes. This makes a reference to Taoist thought. Yique, could you tell us about the relationship between your work and Chinese Taoist thinking?
Yeah. Oh, it's really a big challenge for me to expression this through English. Yeah. So 一切之道, it means like it's being translated by Yique's way now. But in China, 一切之道 means like it's someone's how to say, it's something, it's a style for people. You could say it's a style. Also, maybe you could say it's a belief for one person. And it's really hard to, in Chinese, like a lot of people, even like the philosopher, like Lao Tzu, like Kongzi, they are not saying philosophy into logic thinking. They are like you could say Confucius and Kongzi. Like his book is just one sentence, and one sentence. They are not saying kind of, so it's becoming a really how to say oh, my English is just that. Like for me, this is really kind of a balancing in China. Like so this is also this title is related to the work, the graffiti work, because the graffiti work is called the movement of the opposite. It's also one symbol of Tao. Sometimes people will like describe it becoming a circle and yin and yang. So it will be like, how to say? Help me, Paul.
Yeah, well, I could. You're very eloquent about this, but just for the audience's benefit, particularly those in the audience who are not so familiar with Chinese language and culture, Yique's way in Chinese would be Yique's, Yique Dao. Like the Dao as a character refers to the idea of a way or a path. So Taoism is a philosophy of the way. And the Tao in Chinese, historically in Chinese thinking, is if you like, a cosmological way, the way of the universe, the way of nature, the way of all things. And in both Confucianism and Taoism, and Confucianism precedes Taoism, but Taoism then becomes a great sort of supportive discourse for Confucianism. But in both cases, they look to reconcile extremes and opposites through a kind of non-rationalist way of thinking about things. And we're all familiar with the yin-yang symbol. It's the idea that opposites are not entirely opposites and that they constantly reciprocate one another. So it's a way of kind of ameliorating oppositions or clashes. So if you've ever wondered why Chinese culture tends towards a kind of harmonizing or reciprocal way of thinking, it's because of that. And this is not to say that there isn't rational thinking in Chinese culture. Confucianist thought is very rational in many ways. It's an idealist, rationalist way of thinking about how you govern society. And one of the key things about this is that it's based, a strong element of this is aesthetic, is that the expression of the relationship between rationalism and non-rationalism finds a kind of home in aesthetics and in art. So art isn't just about making art and pleasing people and, you know, entertainment and beauty, just beauty. It's actually a performance of the moral obligation to find a kind of reciprocal way in society, a way of governing and conducting oneself in society, which is not just oppositional. So hence the subtitle, Mutuality in Extremes. And now I didn't kind of make this up in relation to Yique&rsquo's work. He's the one who offered this as an idea, but it's very interesting to find a contemporary artist who is thinking in terms of traditional Chinese thought in this way, particularly in relation to the work that we've just seen. Tatiana, I'll come back to you, Trey, but Tatiana, do you have any comments about that?
I think for me, and what I love the most about what Yique&rsquo's work does is he kind of grasps this aspect of absurdity within all of his works. And for me specifically, it's just such a simple and direct way for people to understand his concepts and ideas. And I mean, of course, that makes sense because humor, right? With humor, it's going to fix everything, right? So in a way, it kind of makes people more vulnerable and like kind of puts them in a lull to be able to kind of understand his work a little bit more and be able to question themselves and reality as well. But it's also interesting because in a way, the East London Socialist core values, he did use a little bit of absurdity, but it was such a big backlash that, but then that comes into play with social media and how we react to and how we use social media as a way to kind of be able to hide behind screens and be able to say the worst things, right? So it's just, his work is just really interesting, being able to kind of grasp different aspects of society and culture and politics and philosophy and be able to kind of put it all together.
I'm glad you brought up this term humor, because in Chinese, there's a kind of homophone for the English or the Anglophone word humor, which arose in Chinese culture, yuomor, which was coined by a poet. I can't remember the poet's name, in the early 20th century, because it's important for everybody to understand that concepts that we're familiar with in the English language context are not historically part of Chinese culture. They've had to be translated. However, yuomor does have a historical place in Chinese culture, but it doesn't quite mean humor in the way that we understand it in the West or in English language context. It kind of means silent calm. It's a combination of two characters. And silent calm is part of this Taoist Confucian way of thinking about aesthetics. So there's a kind of historical idea of humor. And then there's this kind of more modern translation of humor into Chinese culture using the homophone humor. The interesting thing about that is that they both have a relationship to this idea of ameliorating opposites, of reciprocation. So silent calm is an aesthetic term in Chinese poetry and Chinese painting historically. And it's about finding this kind of interaction between opposites, which is also sort of a bit bland or flat from a Western perspective, but has an enormous cultural and political value or meaning in Chinese culture. Yique, do you want to give us some final comments, and then we'll maybe take some questions from the audience?
Okay. Let me think. For this work, to be honest, I'm already thinking a lot, because like it's becoming a circle in my head already. So sometimes I could keep thinking about this thing, and it's becoming my journey. It's becoming my, maybe it could come with me in my rest of life. So it's already becoming a really, not personal, but for me it's really personal feeling, and it's a journey for me itself. So I post one thing because in China, in WeChat we have a kind of like a 朋友圈. It's like Instagram, people will post something here, and I post one word. It's like one night's dream that stay with me for the rest of my life. It's kind of like this for this work. Yeah.
Okay. Eleanor has already kind of prompted audience questions, but while anybody, including Eleanor and her team, are thinking of some possible questions, let me just ask one question to Yique. Were you surprised at the audience response to your work? I know you the work planned a response of that kind, but were you surprised or shocked by how people received your work, both physically and online?
Yeah, to be honest, like I do know a lot of Chinese history, like let's say 6-4 or something. I do know that before, but like I don't know in that time people will kind of like this. This is out of my understanding, to be honest. But it's for me, I need to say it's also becoming a part of work, and the people, I feel maybe let me think, maybe 70% of blame is from China, is from Chinese person. So it also means it's in Chinese system, it have a self construction in our culture itself. Yeah,
I mean, it's quite important, and again, for anybody who's not familiar with China, there can be a view from outside of China that somehow China has no public discourse. There's no kind of debate or opposition, or at least questioning of dominant ideas. But actually, historically, that's not the case. Particularly public wall painting or posting on walls, historically in China, has been an important aspect of public discourse. So this goes back before communist China to imperial China, where petitioning or posting petitions on walls was a way of drawing the imperial state's attention to certain things. And in the Republican era and in the communist era, the idea of big character posters, Dazabao, and also the things like the democracy wall, in the context of post-Maoist China, like in the late 70s and 80s and beyond that. And the use of wall painting as a form of propaganda by the government, hence the use of these core socialist values in relation to this work. All of these are familiar ways, physically, of promoting some kind of public discourse, either just drawing attention to things or trying to influence government or even sparking discussion. I mean, certainly in the late 70s and early 80s, the democracy wall in Beijing and similar things elsewhere were a way of debating where does the country go now. Now, this is within a very different set of structures to the ones that we're used to within liberal democracies. But nevertheless, it's important to understand that China has its own ways of doing this publicly. They may not kind of live up to the expectations of public discourse in European and American contexts and Westernized contexts. Nevertheless, they are there, and it's understanding what they mean is quite important, and particularly to this work, where Yique is saying it goes beyond the physical wall, it suddenly goes into social media. And it's a space where you can criticize or you can agree or whatever it happens to be. And I think that's an important value of this work. It just gets beyond a simply a socials debate, because it's a physical work. And it's also transcultural. It's not just about China, it's about the way this is perceived in different contexts, particularly in the London context, where specific issues of kind of social control exist. Eleanor, I think we have a question from a member of the audience.
Yeah, we can definitely turn to questions. Thank you so much, Paul and Tatiana and Yique, for this conversation today. And it was so exciting to see the trailer for the exhibition and the documentary. So thank you. We do have a question from Frank in the audience. So Frank is wondering about the process of covering up the other work. So he wrote, did you paint over the aesthetic work of Londoners with whitewash and political materials that caused backlash? Did you get that question, Yique?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand.
People locally didn't necessarily like you painting over all of the paintings that were there, did they, Yique?
I feel it all depends on the people. Some people will like it because it get a new canvas. So like some graffiti artists, they really like this work. They feel, oh, I got a new canvas, so we could do it again. They feel it's fine. But like maybe some people feel, wow, it's beautiful before. Why you do like this? So like the things going to now, also I want to sing talking about a little bit about my feelings. Like I feel it's sometimes a little bit hard to people to understanding this work, the aesthetic in kind of this work through technology, because like for the development of the technology, people are really want to get happy or get like feel good from really simple things. They couldn't so they always feeding into the really kind of face outside the thing itself. Yeah.
Well, also, Yique, you mentioned to me before that one of the murals that you covered up was actually, I think, in honor of a graffiti artist that had recently passed away, and so his friends were telling you they were like basically kind of angry at you for covering it up.
Oh yeah. But
You told me that.
I don't know that before. So
yeah, no, of course not.
Yeah. So in that time, I just already decided to do it. So it not make me stop it. Yeah, it just not make me stop it.
Yeah, of course. But it's also, that's the point of graffiti, right? It's supposed to be ephemeral. Like it's supposed to not consistently be there. So of course you didn't know, you know.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that question. I'd like to ask a question, Yique. I'm curious about if music is a part of your practice at all, and I know you do work with performance in a more traditional sense, but I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about if you listen to music while you work or if you do any work in music.
Oh yeah, I feel for music, this media, I do really like music. I come into like Berlin. I feel it's a club in German, in Berlin. It's a techno club, I feel. Yeah. So, but I feel I'm really a audience for music. But not a creator for music. It's kind of music for me. I just personally, music. It let me feel really like abstraction painting. It's a media really related to abstraction painting. It comes to people's feeling a lot, and this and it will reflect the common feeling. Like some music will let most of people feel kind of happy or afraid. It's really come with common sense. Like yeah. So, but like, come back to my creation, I always find something. It's being how to say, created by society, not I feel the music it have something spiritual itself. It have something not being structured by human. It have something really from longest before, like when people are just born. Yeah. So, but like for the contemporary art, I do feel contemporary art it's a different art media. It's really, how to say, it's beyond to the society construction. So it's sorry, through my whole day's Chinese working, it's my English. I'm really sorry. It's basically, I feel what I want to say is like contemporary arts. It's not really about humans' common sense. Like it's not a feeling from nature. It's a feeling from society itself. It's so people create up. I'll just say. Let me just translate. 社会学的基础上再创作。 on the basis of sociology in the creation. For me, it's like this. So yes.
No, thank you so much, Yique. That was great. Thank you. And unless Tatiana or Paul would like to ask a question, which you're welcome to do, we can do the reading now. Not sure, Tatiana or Paul, I'll just give you a moment to jump in if you'd like.
No, I just think that whole discussion did cover a whole range of important points about the work, which I think is much richer than simply thinking of a kind of covering over of one form of public wall painting with another, which is basically what that particular work is about. But it's so much richer than that, transculturally. And as Yique was just saying, the whole question about how music relates to this. Fascinating further discussion, I think, because as we all know, graffiti in westernized context is very much part of hip hop and further music cultures. But Yique is referring to other kinds of interpretation of music which are kind of beyond the social, which I think is very, very interesting. And I think maybe something we can pick up on in the discussions around the show later in the year. Tatiana?
I just found one of my friends is inside this room. He is also the person who joins this graffiti behavior. I just want to ask if he wants to say something. So Gino, are you there?
Hi, hello.
Yeah.
Hi, it's me. Hello.
He's really a main person in our team. Like we together to plan this work. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you everyone. Hello. Good to see you guys.
So say something, Gino. Say something. What do you want to say?
Yeah, just we just collaborate with that project, and yeah, it's good to hear to listen to you guys and discuss about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's great because art is a social activity. It's not just dependent on single individuals, as important as Yique is. That work and other works by Yique are produced by teams of people. And I think it's important to recognize that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, even when I come back to China, and I'm doing curating in the museum, I always couldn't really separate the curation and art creative. Like for me, sometimes I curating through artistic way, and I creation through curatorial way. It's really mixed for me.
Well, I think that would be a great time to transition over to the reading, Yique. If you want to introduce it, feel free, or just jump in.
Oh yeah, the point. Okay, I'm gonna read it's kind of my favorite poetry, and his name is Bei Dao, and his poem is named how to say, it's an answer, in translates to English, answer, 回答. So I'm gonna read it. 回答，卑鄙是卑鄙者的通行证，高尚是高尚者的墓志铭。看吧，在那镀金的天空中，飘满了死者弯曲的倒影。冰川季过去了，为什么到处都是冰凌？好望角发现了，为什么死海里千帆相近？我来到这个世界上，只带着纸、绳索 和身影，只为了在审判之前宣读那些被判决了的声音。告诉你吧，世界，我不相信。纵使你脚下有1000名挑战者，那就把我算作第1001名。我不相信天是蓝的，我不相信雷有回声，我不相信梦是假的，我不相信死无报应。如果海洋注定要决堤，就让所有的苦水都注入我心中；如果陆地注定要上升，就让人类重新选择生存的峰顶。新的转机和闪闪的星斗正在缀满没有遮拦的天空，那是5000年的龟形文字，那是未来人们凝视的眼睛。Yeah, I finished it.
Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Tatiana.
Or I do have one thing. So we do have a Instagram for our exhibition. It's called the Instagram handle is @thewayexhibition. So it would help us a lot if people followed us, and we're just gonna have it be kind of like an archival sort of thing for Yiche's work in our exhibition. So yeah, definitely follow us if you can.
Yes, and I'm going to drop that link in the chat right now. So everyone go ahead and give a follow. Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, Yiche. Thank you, Paul. And we'd also, as always, like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art for sponsoring our NSE program and for supporting our archive, where this conversation will be posted shortly. The RIL has been free and independent for 23 years. A donation directly supports our writers, production staff, and operations. So consider supporting us through the link in the chat that will be shared in a moment. And join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for a conversation with Rosalie Goldberg, Anna Janevsky, Zoe Leonard, Barry Schwabsky, and Lynn Tillman on Joan Jonas, Good Night, Good Morning, on view right now at MoMA. Thanks for tuning in today, everyone, and you can now turn on your microphone to say hello and goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Bye.
everybody.